My husband had a car accident while he was driving. His leg injuries were severe, and I was certain that he'd be wheelchair-bound for a while. He weakly turned to me in the hospital bed and asked me for help.
"Sorry, but please take care of me."
Even when I saw him like that, I didn't feel any sympathy. I've been getting a cold shoulder from him for a long time. "No way. Not gonna happen," I said with a laugh, and he was left speechless. I casually checked the next bed and was devastated when I saw the person laying there. So, it was true after all. I vowed to myself that I would never help him. I'm Valerie, 33 years old. I work hard as a nurse at the hospital. I have a close friend named Julia, whom I've known since high school. She's quite different from me and has a glamorous and beautiful appearance. Her figure is outstanding, so people often mistake her for a model or actress. She caught the eye of the CEO's son during her corporate days and got married. She's now a homemaker with one son. Despite the significant difference in our circumstances, she's always been a good friend to me. Since she has more experience with guys, I confide in her about my love life. Being a nurse is a demanding job. There are often night shifts, and being called in on days off for emergencies is not uncommon. Because of this, I haven't had much luck in the romance department. When I complained to Julia, she introduced me to Walter, who would later become my husband. He's kind, good-looking, and just an amazing guy. If I were single, I would have pursued him myself. He's such a catch, who's also got a successful career. And so, the blind date was arranged. In a way, Julia could be considered the Cupid who brought us together. As she said, he's a caring and gentlemanly, handsome guy. He excels at his job, and since we're both working, he shares household responsibilities with me. When he popped the question, I was overjoyed, but I also had doubts about whether I was good enough for him. He sweetly said, "You're perfect for me. I'm drawn to your modesty." And with that, we got married and started living together in an apartment. I felt deep gratitude for being married to him and owed Julia a lot for bringing us together. Despite having a peaceful life without any major arguments, there's one thing that troubles me. Even after 3 years of marriage, we still haven't conceived a child. We're actively trying, but it just isn't happening. I'm 33 now and felt a sense of urgency due to my age. Nowadays, with the advancements in medical technology, it's not uncommon for people to give birth in their late 30s to their 40s. Given my background in healthcare, I also know the various risks that an advanced maternal age poses to both the mother and the child. That's why I want to have a baby as soon as possible. My longing is so strong that I start considering fertility treatments. One day, I brought up the topic to Walter. I think the reason why we haven't been successful is that both of us or one of us has an issue. I want to get a thorough test to find out. So let's go to the clinic together. I thought that he, who was normally loving and caring, would surely agree. However, my expectations were quickly shattered. He refused to undergo infertility testing, no matter how hard I tried to persuade him.
"No way. It's embarrassing. I'm not infertile, you know. If anything, it's Probably you.
His unusual assertiveness made me uneasy. How can you be so sure? You can't determine infertility without a test. His face contorted with anxiety, and he broke into a cold sweat while his eyes darted nervously around the room.
Well, I just have a feeling. There's nothing particularly wrong with my health anyway.
His suspicious behavior led me to intuit that he was hiding something, although I had no concrete evidence. Our conversation didn't progress, and the topic of infertility treatment remained unresolved. I couldn't help but be curious about what he was hiding. Once you start suspecting someone, you begin to notice things you hadn't before. For instance, he frequently has to work late, despite the number of days on his pay stub not aligning with that. There was even a time when he came home late and had the scent of sweet woman's perfume on him. He brushed it off, saying he had been out for a work event, but it seemed fishy. Furthermore, I often find strands of long hair in his car. We both have short hair, so it makes no sense. He claims that it fell when he had a female colleague in the car, but it just doesn't sit right with me. I doubt that there are any male colleagues with such long hair, and it's hard to believe he regularly gives female colleagues rides. My suspicions about him deepens. So, I decided to confide in Julia about him. She arrived at a cafe, looking all put together in designer clothes, with glossy hair and immaculate makeup. Still as beautiful as ever. Sorry for keeping you waiting. So, what's going on? You said something related to Walter? I explained to her all the suspicious behavior and how his attitude toward infertility treatment was strange. I expected her to offer some advice on how to deal with the suspicion of infidelity. To my surprise, she said it was all my fault. I can't imagine a serious guy like him would cheat. You're just overthinking it. I understand being anxious about not getting pregnant, but that doesn't mean you should take out on him. But there are so many shady things. When I confronted him, he acted strangely. Anyone would freak out if their spouse suddenly accused them of cheating. As for the infertility treatment, if there is nothing wrong with his health, it's natural for him to deny it. Hey, you're not thinking about a divorce over such a minor thing as this, right? It's a shame to part with someone as wonderful as him. She tried to persuade me, which left me feeling incredibly uneasy inside. I thought she'd at least listen to me whine and offer some comfort, even if she didn't give advice. In reality, she defended Walter, who had a suspicion of infidelity, and pointed out that it was my fault. Maybe she felt she had to defend him since she introduced us. Nonetheless, it bothered me that she adamantly took his side. I couldn't help but wonder why. Afterward, I tried to bring up the topic of infertility testing with Walter whenever I could, but he would quickly dodge the subject, citing work commitments. Days passed, but the suspicion of his infidelity didn't clear up, and I couldn't take it anymore. Finally, I decided to dig deeper and question him. Honey, are you hiding something from me? Like something related to other women? He cried out.
Huh?
And flinched. He tried to argue back, but his voice quivered.
Why would you suddenly say something like that? I would never hide anything from you.
I want to trust you too. But lately, you've been acting strangely. You're not straightforward about the hair in the car or the perfume. And you've been avoiding the topic of infertility treatment. Is there something you're keeping from me? I asked, looking him in the eyes, and he averted his gaze. After a silence that lasted for about half a minute, he suddenly yelled at me.
Shut up. Who do you think you are to accuse me like this? A nobody like you got to marry someone like me. You're so out of line. Just listen to me and stay quiet.
His outburst was so intense that it shocked me. He had never yelled at me since we got together.
All this trouble with having a child is all your fault. There's nothing wrong with me. Marrying a woman like you is like drawing the short straw,
he declared, and then stormed off to the bedroom. I was left stunned by the whole ordeal. To think he could hurl such insults at me just because I asked a few questions. At the same time, I became even more distrustful of him. If he had nothing to hide, why didn't he calmly deny the accusations? His anger seemed unusual. I was sure there was something going on. The next day, he left for work without having breakfast. When he came back home, he threw a petition for divorce at me.
I'll let yesterday's incident slide, because I'm a forgiving person. But next time you complain about me, it's a divorce.
He threatened arrogantly. He seemed to think that I would stay silent and endure it. Honestly, I had plenty of things to say to him. It was clear to me that he was the one acting fishy, so I didn't understand why I should be the one to back down. Unfortunately, the fact remained that there was no concrete evidence of his affair. I humbly apologized for accusing him and kept the form on hand for the time being. He looked satisfied as he listened to my apology, but in my mind, I was preoccupied with how to uncover his secret. Although a private investigator was expensive, I was considering hiring one, but things took an unexpected turn. I received a call from someone who revealed his affair and even told me the identity of his mistress. The story was so shocking that it made my head spin. While I had expected his infidelity, the identity of his mistress was a surprise. The person who provided the information had no reason to lie to me, and later he showed me evidence that backed up what he said. I was devastated and ended up in tears. Once I composed myself, I was filled with anger toward both Walter and his mistress. I vowed not to let them get away and swore to bring them down. One day I came home to find Walter packing his suitcase. He seemed to be in a good mood, even humming a tune.
Oh, you're home. Good timing. I'm sorry for the suddenness, but I'm heading out on a business trip now. I'll be away for about a week, so please, take care of the house, he nonchalantly announced. Of course, I couldn't just nod in agreement because there was something important we needed to discuss. Wait, I have something important to talk to you about. As soon as I said that, his face turned noticeably sour. He probably thought I was going to bring up the infertility topic again. When I tried to speak, he cut me off saying, Enough already. I've told you many times. There's nothing wrong with me, so I won't go for the test. You're being annoying. I'm in a hurry, I'm leaving now.
I tried to tell him that wasn't it, but he didn't listen and quickly left. I told myself not to show any mercy upon his return. I suppressed the urge to scream in anger and wished for some divine retribution to befall him. Surprisingly, my wish came true quite easily. A few hours after he left, I received a call from the police.
Your husband and his sister have been in a car accident and were urgently transported to the hospital.
Apparently, he had been driving too fast and couldn't navigate a curve, resulting in a crash. By the way, he's an only child, so there was no sister to be with him. Most likely, the woman with him was his mistress. I rushed to the hospital and spoke to the doctor. Walter has severe leg injuries, and it was confirmed that he would be in a wheelchair for the foreseeable future. I went to his room to check on him. When he saw me, he seemed somewhat uncomfortable, but he managed a weak smile and asked me for a favor.
You must have heard it from the doctor, but I'll be living in a wheelchair from now on. I'm sorry for the trouble, but I'm asking you to take care of me.
In a healthy, loving marriage, if a spouse were asked to take care of the other, they would probably agree without hesitation. However, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. Take care of you? That's impossible. No doubt about it. He was left dumbfounded by my response. He clearly hadn't expected me to refuse him. I stared at him with a mocking look. Did you really think I hadn't realized yet? The person you were with was your mistress, wasn't she? You lied about having a sister, even though you're an only child. He was turning pale as he listened. He either couldn't find the words to defend himself or just couldn't make a sound but kept opening and closing his mouth. Ignoring him, I opened the curtain to the adjacent bed where his sister was supposed to be resting. There, I found my best friend Julia. The doctor said that she too was seriously injured and required nursing care. I gazed at her for a while, and then I glared at Walter. So, she was your mistress after all. In fact, it was her husband who informed me about their affair. He had suspected her infidelity, hired a private investigator, and discovered that Walter was her partner. Apparently, they had been seeing each other for quite some time. She didn't want to give up her luxurious lifestyle with her husband and had proposed to Walter to marry me as a cover-up. There was an even more shocking and dreadful revelation. The son she had given birth to wasn't her husband's, it was Walter's. Her husband had become suspicious because the son looked nothing like him and had conducted a DNA test. It confirmed that there was no biological relationship between them. When I saw the son's face, which bore a striking resemblance to Walter, I was amazed. He was so certain he had no issue because Julia had given birth to his child. It made sense to deny being infertile with a track record like that. When he looked at me and Julia's husband with despair, I crushed him with another wave of bad news. So, we're getting a divorce. I'll make sure to claim alimony too. I have a lawyer already, so be prepared, I declared, ready to leave. But he shouted,
Wait. I was wrong. Julia was persistent, and I ended up continuing the affair. I genuinely love you. You know that, right, honey? I'll break up with her. Please, reconsider the divorce.
He pleaded earnestly, but his words had no effect on my heart. Instead, my disappointment in him grew. He was just trying to secure me as a caregiver and, as a bonus, avoid the alimony claim. His selfishness infuriated me. It was the perfect time to confront him head on. I took a deep breath and gave him a piece of my mind. So, this is your true nature, huh? How pathetic, trying to put the blame on her and sell her out to save yourself. I have to say, I feel sorry for her now. No chance I'll ever get back together with a despicable man like you.
Please, don't say that. You're the only one for me.
Ugh, you're making me sick. After cheating and even having an illegitimate child? Such rubbish talk won't work for me. Besides, I've already submitted the form you gave me, so I have no obligation to help you anymore. Don't ever come near me again. I retorted, and this time, I walked out of the room for real. I could hear his anguished voice from behind, but I didn't look back. Several months later, Walter, Julia, her husband, and I were all divorced. Julia's husband and I each claimed alimony from our ex-spouses, but neither of them had enough money. They ended up borrowing from loan sharks to pay us. 6 months after we divorced, they got married, but they seemed to be struggling. Walter couldn't handle the judgmental eyes of colleagues who had found out about how the accident led to his divorce, so he left his job. His relatives and friends severed ties with him, and despite needing caregiving for his wheelchair-bound condition, no one would lend a hand. They're leading a miserable life, juggling multiple part-time jobs and day labor just to make ends meet and raise their child. Meanwhile, I'm savoring my carefree single life. I chose to see this as a reward granted by fate. That's what I tell myself now.